Topic of sleep. If you've been struggling and you want to get more energy, you want to burn more body fat, and you want to build more muscle, that's what we're here for today. It's going to be awesome. Now, have you found yourself nodding off at your desk when you're trying to work? You found yourself kind of falling asleep in the middle of the day and you're not even sure why? Maybe you're having a hard time with hormone balances and appetite and everything else. All of this could be affected by sleep. And I'm going to use the words of Coach Aaron today because our episode is going to be about the sleep quality you're getting. And if you're feeling like you want to, stop dragging ass, you want to stop feeling fat, and you want to go from scrawny to stout, Coach AJ's got the answers for you today in our new episode of the Ultimate Man podcast. We've been doing this for about 4 months now, building our brand of podcasting. But we've been in this industry for easily over 5 decades. Coach Aaron and I have been doing this for a long time together, and we've been doing it individually, not as a unit. But today we've brought this project together to help you guys get the best out of what we have to offer you. And we've both been on the losing side of bad sleep. We've been on the overweight side, the struggle side, even the depression side. So guys listening to the podcast, we want you to know that we're sincere. When we give you the information, the experience, we're trying to help you. All right, we're here to make sure you're getting the best information and clear out through the noise. So today we want to do that for the topic of sleep. If you've been struggling and you want to get more energy, you want to burn more body fat, and you want to build more muscle, that's what we're here for today. It's going to be awesome. Now, if you are listening to this episode and you realize there's other men in your life, people, brothers, uncles, fathers, whatever, share our podcast with them. Give them a chance to hear what you're going to hear today. And if you get value, it's like a great movie. Once you watch that movie, you want to tell everybody about it. So please do that. Share and subscribe. We're always looking to build our brand, but also we want to communicate and build our community. So if you guys could do that for us, click that subscribe button. And let's get started on joining the Ultimate Man community. We love you guys. We appreciate you. And again, our mission statement here is that we want to optimize the physical fitness, the health, the mindset of the guys who are listening to the show. And of course, if you're not listening to the show, you want to share as much as possible. You might get this from a friend or a family member, and we're going to try and keep that going. Coach Aaron's become a close family, friend, and partner of mine in the business. It's been amazing to get to know this guy, and I can't wait to hear all of his tips, strategies, and expertise on getting good quality sleep. He's used this on many clients throughout his journey as a coach, but he also had to use this for himself to make sure that he's in the best optimal shape he could be in as well. So Coach AJ, welcome to the sleep seminar we're going to do today on the Ultimate Man podcast. How are you feeling today, brother?
I'm feeling rested today, brother. I'm feeling rested. I got a good night's sleep, and it's a game changer. And it was not always that way. I used to have some horrible sleep habits and did some bad things that just really, put my sleep in the hole. And it's no fun just to be dragging ass, and just be low lethargy, and your mental clarity is not on point, and just all the things that goes along with having bad sleep. If you're trying to like optimize your physical performance like we are, and we're helping our guys in the Ultimate Man Project do, you're wanting to recomposition your body, burn that fat, build the muscle, and hustle. Sleep optimization is where it all starts, man. If you don't have that dialed in for the win, it's a losing battle. So today we've got some great tips and tricks and tools to help you optimize your sleep so you can be more badass in life.
I love it. I love it. I love the energy too. It's great. We're doing this in the morning when we film this, so I don't know when you're listening to it out there, guys in the world, but understand that a good start to your day sets up for a great sleep. So if you're struggling with sleep, sometimes the morning routine is what's going to, be setting you off. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to help you guys get things in order. So get your pen, get your paper, your notebook, whatever you're taking notes on. Maybe it's your phone, and we're going to spend an hour with you. I'm going to set an alarm because Coach Aaron and I get off and we start talking. We go way too long sometimes, and it's always good. We always have great intention, but we're trying to do something for ourselves here. Set a goal and stick to it. So we're going to work on that. I'm going to hit start on there and let this show begin. All right, so Coach Aaron, one of the things that we were talking about was some of the problems that lack of sleep can cause. First, I don't think people realize the value of quality sleep. I know that I didn't. When I first got started, I undervalued it. People always said, got a good night's sleep, get 8 hours, and it was kind of just a blanket statement. Didn't mean anything. So what is 8 hours about? What's the purpose of it? We're going to try to get into that. But we made a list of problems that might arise, like increased risk of physical exhaustion and decreased performance. Now, we know that from a physical standpoint in our exercise, but if you could run through some of the bullet points that you made for us, Just kind of rhyme them off so the listeners know kind of some of the consequences of not getting good sleep. All right.
Totally, yeah. So impaired cognitive function and decreased alertness. You're just not thinking, you just, not running on all cylinders, and it sucks just to be like not running at full capacity. You have those good days when you're like, oh man, I'm running on all cylinders. I feel good. You get 5, 6 hours of sleep the night before, and you're running half-ass, and it affects every aspect of your life. So, improve that cognitive function. Elevated risk of accidents and injuries. If you're just sleepy and groggy, you're gonna trip and stumble and fumble things around. Weakened immune system. You'll be more catching colds more likely. Impaired memory and cognitive processing. Just can't remember those names like you used to. You just can't like verbally articulate what you want to, convey as well. Elevated risk of chronic health conditions such as obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Those are some big ones, right? Reduced productivity and impaired decision making abilities. So if you're an entrepreneur or a busy professional, like we are, and you're just trying to optimize that work productivity, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to be able to crush it. Um, Negative impact on your mental health, including increased risk of anxiety and depression, which is a huge one that I used to go through a lot. Big time anxiety, and if you're really not getting your sleep up to par, it's really going to exacerbate that. Disruption of hormonal balance, leading to appetite dysregulation and weight gain. So if you're not getting enough sleep, it's going to screw up your testosterone levels, your growth hormone levels, your overall ability to recover from your workouts. So there's so many problems associated with sleep deprivation, and those are just a handful right there.
I love that. Thanks for doing that, brother. I also see a lot of carryover. Like right when you were talking about that, all these fall as an umbrella under lack of sleep. But when I look at things like disruption of hormone balance, leading to appetite dysregulation and weight gain, that also disruption of hormone balance is like reduced productivity and impaired decision making ability. There's also the mood swings that were mentioned in there, greater susceptibility to mood swings and irritability. Like they carry over because one thing leads to another. It's like a really bad spiral of events that are going downhill, right? So the lack of sleep may start with just one thing you notice, and it's good to keep a journal because you want to kind of find out what is triggering, and of course the sleep, and then start noticing how it affects your day as it plays out. One of the ones you talked about was elevated risk of accidents and injuries. Now, I think car accident right away. You see signs on the highway. I don't know if it is the same in the United States. I'm in Canada, and they put up there fatigue kills, right? Pull over, get some sleep. Like it's a reminder on billboards and signs that go by on the highway because that's where most car accidents are caused. Someone's either distracted driving with a phone or they're literally trying to, stay on the highway too long. And they should be pulling over, taking a hotel or whatever it takes to get some sleep and recovery, but they try to drive through. Next thing you know, you're asleep at the wheel. But that's in the way of like talking about cars. But what about real life? Like just everyday life. If you're in the same groggy state, could you be causing accidents in your own life? Trip and fall? What about how dangerous it might be at the gym? Have you ever had that like you talked about cognitive, which was on the list there, impaired cognitive function and decreased alertness? What if that is a factor while you're trying to perform a heavy squat? Or you're working on a deadlift and you just didn't, you just weren't there, right? The
Yeah.
risk of injury is getting really high. So we're talking performance now, not just in like driving a vehicle fatigue kills, but fatigue can kill in a lot of ways, in the gym or in your life as well. Have you had any experiences, Coach Aaron, where you've been a little bit like lack of sleep, groggy, and maybe in the gym and just kind of made a poor decision or ended up in a way of like where you noticed it affecting you?
Yeah, it's a great point. Like in the gym, I like to think of being in the gym as like kind of like my moving meditation. Like you want to be 100% present in the moment, giving your full attention to the exercise that you're doing. Like every repetition matters. And if you're, decreased cognitive function a little bit and you're just not as sharp and you're a little bit slow and your technique is off just a little bit, you're going to end up probably hurting yourself, like you said, especially if you're doing some compound movement like a heavy squat or something like that. So yeah, there's been times in the past where I just have not been, running on all cylinders, but still my ego wants to get involved and I still want to like go through a really hard kick-ass workout. And then you just end up doing more damage than not sometimes. So it's
Mhm.
it's not a good idea.
Yeah, and again, I like that you've experienced it. I want to say that I've experienced it too in a way of it plays. I remember you mentioned in here something about depression and I'm looking through mental health and anxiety and depression. That's something sleep alone can do is weigh on that. But in the form of performance, I've noticed in the gym on days where I've went in there on lack of sleep and I've tried to perform my previous, let's say my previous best or my previous expectation and I've underperformed, it's left me feeling like I failed, right? Like I didn't actually do it. So now I'm in my own head feeling like I've lost progress. I'm actually getting weaker, not stronger. And what I'm there for is to get stronger. So it wasn't my ability that decreased. It was my sleep that was making me feel and not have the energy. And then, of course, the lack of food. Remember, we talked about that in there, leading to appetite dysregulation. If your sleep is off, your food is now off. And if your food's off, your fuel's off. And if you're not fueled, your workout is off. So all of it's just a chain, man. It's a vicious cycle, right? So I think that is really important that we touch on those. And the last one I want to point out that you put in there was reduced productivity and impaired decision making. And you mentioned business. Businessmen who are listening to our podcast right now, your best decisions are made when you're clear, you're alert. You're going to hear about nootropics out there in the industry today, these things that are designed for brain alertness. And if you didn't see the last episode of our podcast, the main event with Deshaun White, wow, that was awesome. It was an amazing episode. Coach Aaron had brought in this guest who had gone after a Guinness World Record. Do you think he could have done that on a night when he didn't get sleep? Right? Like,
Shoot.
wow. This you got to optimize these things. And of course, Deshaun was also talking about being an entrepreneur and a businessman and an innovator. These are the types of guys we want in our community, the people who have that mind. But we need you sleeping, resting, recovering so that your brain is sharp. And we have these days where we're just not sharp. And we know that if we go back and look, it was related mostly to the fact that we didn't get a good night's sleep. So I just want to bring those points to the forefront and kind of give some examples of those because they're great points in there. And of course, Aaron and I are proof that we were once on the other side of it where sleep didn't really matter to us. We didn't understand the value either. And today we want to give you the experience and impress upon you that we now have better sleep patterns and we're not perfect. We're still going to have nights. And, my son's visiting right now. So we stay up a little later. We play some video games together or whatever we're doing for our, father son bonding time. And I push my sleep a little bit up in there. And, but then I end up sleeping a little more in the morning. If you have that ability, great. But if you don't, you're on a deadline. You got to really watch those times that you're setting your bedtime and your wake up time and try to be sticking to those consistently, which we'll dive into more. But I just want you to know that we are proof that you can get on the winning side of this. If you're struggling with sleep, we're here to help. So we're going to dive into that some more. So stay tuned for more tips to help improve your sleep. And some of them you might not have even heard before. So I know Coach AJ's got some really great tips coming our way. So optimizing sleep quality is one of the one modality to help our clients optimize the Ultimate Man program. Reason we say that is we're doing the summer shred right now, and our week this week is all about getting good quality sleep. So we got some guys in there who are really kicking ass. They're losing the inches of body fat. They're feeling amazing now. And each week we're working on another habit. So if you've never done anything with our Ultimate Man project before, if you see the opportunity to get on board, definitely jump in and try working with us for a little while. You will not be disappointed. These guys are stoked. We're getting great feedback messages as well. So let's go through some of the tips and the strategies, Coach. Where do you want to begin for today?
I'd like to just reiterate what you said. A lot of these, sleep is talked about a lot nowadays. It's kind of like the new thing. Everybody's talking about sleep as the big game changer because it is. And one of the things that we've done, and we go back to this. I like the saying that you say we're putting decades into days. Like we've done decades worth of research. Like Coach Lawrence said, like 5 decades between the two of us here of just watching podcasts and doing research. And one of the things that I've done is I've taken notes on all the podcasts that I've ever listened to, time stamped them. And so I've just looked back at my resources and so all of the podcasts that I've ever listened to, you're getting a lot of the tidbits out of that, as well as all the ones that Coach Lawrence has listened to. And I think one of the points that you just mentioned there right off the bat is just that consistency, that regularity seems to be one of the big things that a lot of these experts are saying is the real thing that really matters, having that regular wake time and sleep time. You have a bedtime set and a wake time and you stick to it. Regularity.
Nice. And so, if that was the case, and our listeners are like, okay, well, what time should I go to bed? What time should I wake up? what would be the advice you'd give them for regularity? So if someone say, they get up at 9 a.m. every morning and they go to bed, they're not sure when to go to bed. Is 8 hours the recommended dosage? Is that what you're supposed to get? We've heard that since the beginning of time. Get 8 hours of sleep. What do you find, Coach? What has been the best advice for you when it comes to being consistent? What time should they go to bed and what time should they wake up? What do you tell them?
I think 7 to 8 hours is a good recommendation for most people. Some people can do fine on less. I could do pretty well on 7 myself. I like what you mentioned before we even jumped on the podcast. That's really important is that the time frame between like 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is that time where you're most likely to get the best REM sleep, that rapid eye movement, right? And that's going to be able to regenerate your and help your thinking the next day. So if you're missing out on that REM sleep and you're going to bed at like midnight, you're potentially not optimizing that REM sleep, which is super crucial.
Nice. I'm going to take notes while you talk, my man, because you are condensing decades into days. I love it. So if you guys are watching our podcast, not just listening, and you see me looking down, I'm looking at notes. I'm looking at studies. Like Coach Aaron said, we're bringing all the information to you based on all the work we've put in already, things we've applied. And as I listen to Coach Aaron, I'm going to be taking notes too. So because there's always some great information that he's either used or encountered in his journey, and vice versa, I'm sure. So sleep time between 10 and 2 is optimal for that REM stage. I've seen that, I've read that, and I've seen it to be true. Obviously, when you look at anyone who's got a trackable device like a wearable, a Fitbit, or an Aura ring, it actually tracks your sleep based on your breathing, your heart rate, and some of them can do temperature regulation and everything. These devices are getting pretty fancy, and some people will argue wearables aren't reliable. And that's fine. You can argue whatever you want. You're allowed to do what you want. But at the end of the day, I always say this: if it's inconsistent, or sorry, if it's off and it's wrong, as long as it's consistently off and wrong, the same amount, you'll still see which way you're trending. Which I find is just like any scale you get on. You go, this scale's telling me I'm 190 pounds. This scale's telling me I'm 195. Which one's right? It doesn't matter. Just use the same one and be consistent, right? It'll tell you from there. So don't get too caught up in that. But if you look at your sleep score, you look at it where it is. I like to break it down, and it gives you the REM stage, the light sleep stage, the deep sleep stage, and it goes through those stages, and it tells you how long you were in each stage. And the first thing is usually the deep sleep kicks in the first little bit. As soon as I fall asleep, I'm seeing that as a response right away. So the deep sleep is recovering that nervous system, and it's doing muscular tissue repair. That's important. That's a really important stage to get into, is deep sleep. And I find that one really highly affected based on what I did that day. So that's important too. But between 10 and 2, the studies are showing that REM sleep is at its highest. And that's, I believe, the compartmentalization stage with all the memories and things we've experienced for the day. It's more the cognitive restructure. So, Coach Aaron, about the REM sleep part of it, is that what you found as well in the studying and the information was that it was kind of the mental health filing or the like the compartmentalization of cognitive?
Yeah, definitely the
Okay.
cognitive repair and stuff. And then as well as just even from personal experience, I had wore a Aura ring for a long time. And I like you said, it's got a graph that it shows you of like when your deep sleep, REM sleep is, and all these factors. And I noticed on the nights that I went to bed early at like 9 or 9 p.m. rather, those first few hours were definitely like the longest periods of the deep and the REM. So
Mhm.
I think that definitely correlates with my findings as well.
Perfect. Good. So, again, if you're listening to our podcast and you want to check out any of the references, we might drop a name here and there, someone we've listened to before. You can go check them out too, because there's, information is great to collect, but then it's going to be application. We always say application over information. Coach Aaron and I want to take you to the point where you're taking action. So you can collect all our knowledge, which is great. It's free, it's here. But if you want to get actionable on it, you got to either implement what you're learning right now or reach out to us for the coaching, and we will take you on the journey and help you with this. So it's really important. Some of the tips and strategies that start you off. So we talked about going to bed at a certain time. Do you do any specific protocols to prepare the room before you go to bed? Is there some things we can give the listener right now about how to get a better night's sleep just in the room itself? What do you do to the room? Is there a certain room you have to go to get the best sleep? What do you notice?
Definitely just dimming all the lights, like an hour or so before bed. Ideally, trying to turn off all of your electronic devices, not getting a bunch of screen time before bed is good. Get off your phone or put in like nighttime mode so you're not getting that blue light. They even have some apps where you can get like more of a nighttime mode on your phone or your laptop or whatever. So that's what I'll do. I'll just generally try to start winding down an hour before sleep so I can kind of get into that state.
Perfect. And is there anything to be said about the temperature of the room? Have you found that you get a better sleep due to temperature?
Big time, big time. That's like one of the huge factors for me. If it's hot summertime, it's just, I mean, it's so much harder to go to sleep. So the ideal temperature from all the studies that I found is somewhere between about 60 to 68 degrees. And I definitely agree with that. If it's under 68, I sleep way better.
I totally agree. I've found the same evidence out there in the stuff that I've studied as well. And then I've applied it to myself. And I can say honestly, I sleep at 66. That's the room temperature that I set my room at. There's nights, and again, if you're a listener who maybe doesn't have air conditioning, let's say, and it's the summertime, it's hot, right? I have found that, like, because I've been in that boat before. I'm luckily now I have like a central air system in the house, so I can keep the room at 66 and regulate it. There's been times though I didn't have that luxury, and I know that some of our listeners don't. And so, if you're trying to cool the room down, are there any tips and things they can do to maybe block light and things like that to keep the room cooler? Or is there anything you found about like maybe using a shower before bed, Coach, that you might be able to use as
Yeah.
a
Yeah, even just a hot shower or a hot bath before bed, because the body temperature ideally wants to drop about 2 to 3 degrees to help initiate that sleep process. So if you can take like a hot shower before bed or something like that, your body temperature is elevated after the shower, and then if it drops 2 to 3 degrees after that, then it's going to start help to initiate the sleep process.
Mhm. That sounds counterproductive, doesn't it? Again, the listeners be like, okay, so I'm trying to cool down. You want me to take a hot shower? How's that make any sense? That's going to heat me
Right,
up, isn't it?
right.
I'll be
Yeah.
sweating. What is the body going to do to counter that, right? So, what are your findings? Have you done a hot shower before bed, and did you find that it actually benefited you?
Yeah, I mean, it's relaxing for one. It just feels good, and then you increase your body temperature from the shower, and then when you go to a cool room after the hot shower, your body temperature is going to naturally reduce for a couple degrees. So it's
Mhm.
just a real easy hack.
Yeah, I love that. And it's great that you've used it and applied it yourself, coach. And I had to try it myself because I was in the mindset of, hey, it sounds like a hot shower is going to heat me up. That's not going to help. It's going to make me more restless, more miserable. And I found that you're right. It relaxes you because it's soothing, the heat temperature. And then it gave me a chance to have my body. Remember, the body is a creature of survival and adaptation. Its job is to make sure you don't die, right? So whatever force you put against it, it tries to counter to balance things back out again. So if you create the heat, it tries to create the cool. If you create the cool, it tries to create the heat. This is why ice baths have become so popular on the other end of the spectrum, right? To heat the body up is to put it in that shock state, have it try to fight that. And if you go into the hot shower, it's going to try to fight that by cooling you down. It's going to help you sleep. And like Coach AJ said, you're dropping a couple degrees naturally just to try and get good sleep anyway. The body goes into these states. So this is really great information because I have found that when I get two things that seem to keep me up are distractions, which are screens. That's definitely one of them. And you talked about that. Get off those screens before bed. And I didn't realize that the screen was actually keeping me awake, but it's the blue light that's hitting the eyes and keeping the body in a state of awake or alertness, right? It's now seeking. It thinks it's daytime. Remember, light to the body is daytime, darkness to the body is nighttime. That's just the way the body knows. Your body doesn't know what clock time it is on the wall. Keep that in mind, right? If I said to you, what time is it now? You got to look at your watch. Your body can't just tell you what time it is. You might have some pretty good intuitive thought about, correlation to the way it looks outside, but the light and the darkness indicate that. When you start to get dark, it starts to feel like nighttime. So, what about the idea of your room? How do we make it darker, coach?
Blackout sheets over your windows. You could put some like black electrical tape all over, even all the like the little electronic devices that you don't think are really doing that much. They're emitting a light in the middle of the night, and even though your eyes are closed, your body can still sense that light. And I was just looking for one of my stats in here somewhere. If I just go off of recollection, I think like the blue light from the screens can reduce your melatonin for like up to like the 3 hours post, looking at the light. So if you're looking at some screens or whatnot, 3 hours after that, your melatonin production is not optimized and decreases by like 50% or something like that.
Whew.
So block out all those lights. Put some tape or a cover or something over all the electronic devices. Put your phone away from you while you sleep. Put it in airplane mode so it's not putting off that electromagnetic, field, and your body's, absorbing that into your own aura and stuff. So a lot of it sounds a little woo-woo and stuff, but it shit works.
It's true. There's going to be a lot of information and tips we're going to dump on you today. Take any one of them and apply it, and start journaling to see which ones are working for you. And if it's working for you, then put a check mark beside it. And if you didn't find it affected you at all, put a little X mark beside it and move on to the next one. Watch this episode back 3 or 4 times, as much as you need to collect as many of these tips and strategies as possible. Putting tape over a small light, I never even thought of, never crossed my mind, but I do understand that yes, the body can detect that light. It's its job, survival, right? And light is a factor that's going to keep you feeling awake. One more thing about temperature before we move on from temperature of the room. I keep it at 66. There's been nights though, like I said, when I didn't have the air conditioning, I didn't have that luxury, and my room was hot, man, sweating balls hot, right? It was nasty. And I'm like trying to throw sheets off of me, but I like to feel comfortable. I like to cover up. I don't know if that's the same for you, coach, but I can't just sleep without something pulled up over me, which is now going to
Yeah.
trap the heat in even more, right? Making me feel even more hot. So I'm kicking the sheets off and I'm pulling them back up and then I'm kicking them off. It's keeping me awake, man. And so one thing I found, and I don't know if this is something you found, and it's more anecdotal. It's just something I've come across. What I did was I took a cold, wet towel, like ice towel almost, like cold, 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 and I wet my feet, just the bottoms of my feet. Remember, heat escapes out the feet and the top of the head the most. And so I would wet my feet on the bottom and then have my feet outside of the sheets, not inside of the sheets. Right? So my cold feet sticking out the end,
Yeah.
were getting, man, it dropped my temperature fast and I slept like a baby. And I still was able to keep my sheets up too. So I felt that
Cool.
comfort. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. But again, I've not seen any studies on this. Maybe I just had a breakthrough myself in a scientific
Yeah.
experiment.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, my core temperature dropped and I slept amazing. And I had to use this on a regular basis because that was me adapting to the fact I didn't have the luxury of AC. I had to find a way to cool my body down and keep me in that cool state. Remember, the hot shower thing was kind of to get the body to cool down naturally, but making my feet actually feel cold on the external surface helped me to feel like I was cool too already. So
Yeah.
hopefully that works for anyone who's struggling and doesn't have the luxury of AC.
Innovative, bro. Very innovative. I love it. And another thing you just mentioned there too that I've also seen throughout my studies is that like a weighted blanket or something on, weighted sheets or whatever on top of you actually is beneficial as well for helping to induce sleep. So that was something that you just mentioned that you kind of felt intuitively just helped you, and you kind of liked that, but you felt that you were getting body heat from it at the same time. So that was a great way just to kind of counteract that.
Absolutely. And I've heard all kinds of things too. Like, have you heard about magnetic blankets? About like, I mean, the magnet, I guess it's like we talk about the grounding. It was in our previous podcast as well.
Yeah.
Grounding for like our body. Because again, our body's just made up of like carbon atoms, right? We're electricity. And so there's got to be something to this magnetic force in a blanket. Have you used that or have you heard about that at all, Coach?
Yeah, I've got a grounding sheet. It's just a grounding sheet that you put over the top of your mattress, and then you plug it into the wall. And I'm not real, savvy on the intricacies of the scientific and how it all works and all that, so I'm not going to speak onto it much. But I think it does help. And
Mhm.
I think it has something to do, and I could be wrong with, like, if you go to the ocean, like you're soaking up more like negative ions, that type of thing. It's that type of principle. It helps to reset your body's own electromagnetic rhythm with that of the ground and nature. So it's a
I
good
love
way
that.
to get that onto your mattress.
Yeah, I love that. And it's great because we're in a world right now where information is in abundance. It's everywhere. We call it noise. The industry is so noisy. Everybody's an expert. Everybody's got something to offer. And you're hearing a lot about grounding and sunlight. Those two things are important. But we have really found that sunlight, first thing in the morning, has had major impact on the body. And biohackers will preach this on a regular basis. But Coach Aaron and I are here to tell you that we use this as well. We love the outdoors. We love to hike. We love to get out there and use that. So if you're someone who isn't getting outside and getting sunlight regularly, start to add that to your day, and you'll notice you're getting better sleep. Guaranteed. I mean, it's scientifically proven. The studies are there. We've even lived it ourselves, and we use it regularly. So, just as we're on the topic of the grounding and getting outside, touching your feet in the sand or on the earth's surface, that grounding is really important. Anything you want to add to that on the grounding part, Coach?
Well, big time on the sunshine part of it because sunshine, our serotonin is stimulated from the sunshine, and melatonin is a byproduct and produced from the serotonin. So if we're not getting enough sunlight during the day, we're not optimizing those serotonin levels, and thus we're probably not going to sleep as well at night because our serotonin isn't being converted into the melatonin as efficiently.
Love it. Love it. And I'm crossing things off the list here because we've got so many wonderful pieces of information today. I'm just making sure that I've crossed off everything here. And Coach Aaron just talked about melatonin produced from serotonin for crucial sleep. Another note you made on that, and I just want to touch on and ask you about, was 5-HTP, the precursor. Do you have any experience with that? Have you used that before?
Yeah, it's something a lot of the experts recommend taking like before bed, like 100 milligrams of 5-HTP, and that's a precursor to serotonin. So that again, that just kind of helps you get into that sleep state. So I've used it before, and it's one of those things that it's not like taking some prescription sleep pills. It doesn't like knock you on your butt or anything like that. So it's kind of hard to say. Um, definitively whether it has a big impact or not, but I do it as kind of like a little insurance on some nights where I feel like I need a little extra boost in sleep.
Cool, cool. I have no experience with it, so I thought I would ask just because I saw it in the notes that we want to talk about today. And I love picking your brain on this stuff. That's the beauty of this podcast. It's real, it's up front, it's live. We're not editing this, it's coming to you guys the way you're getting it. So thank you for being here and appreciate your subscriptions. So, again, reminder if you haven't already, turn on the little notification bell, hit us with that subscription, become part of the community. We appreciate that very much. One more thing I want to talk about on the supplement side of it, because again, you may have a few more supplement things you wanted to mention. But while we're on the topic of the 5-HTP, the melatonin production stuff, I've noticed that, and again, I don't know if everybody out there is like me, but and you may have an argument for artificial sweeteners and everything else. I mean, that there's no science proving artificial sweeteners are detrimental. There's just not enough studies on it yet to go either way. So I still drink the odd, diet soda, like a Coca-Cola Zero, or an energy drink with a no sugar added, aspartame sweeteners or whatever they're using. And I still feel like that's part of my day. I balance that out and I enjoy it. But I have to realize that caffeine has about a 6 to 8 hour half-life. And so caffeine as a supplement can play a major role if you're timing it wrong on whether you get sleep or not. Coach AJ, do you have any experience with the caffeine part? Any specific, what do we call it? Like anything you've used to stimulate and then found that, oh crap, I took that at the wrong time and now I can't sleep.
Big time, big time. I'm an expert on this. So I used to be a major stimulant caffeine addict. I was on freaking Adderall for probably about 15 years as well. So I used to have this little concoction. I do an Adderall, a little mini dose, a micro dose of Adderall and caffeine several times throughout the day. I was prescribed it for my chronic fatigue and depression and stuff at the time. But anyways, yeah, I mean, if you have caffeine too late or other like fat burners and stuff, there's a lot of them out there that have even a longer half life than the caffeine. Like you said, caffeine's got what 5, 6 to 8. You said,
Yeah.
and so I've heard like 3 to 6, 5. So anywhere, it's a long time. So like say it's generally recommended that you stop your last dose of caffeine around 2 p.m. Okay, so say you even have like a half life of like there's fast metabolizers and there's slow metabolizers of caffeine too. So some people can just burn through it pretty quickly. Other people it stays in their system longer. So if you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine and you have some even at like 2, 3, 4 p.m., which you don't think is that late, it's far enough away from bedtime, and the half life is say even like 5 hours, it's not even going to be fully out of your system until midnight, which is past the time that you should be already into your REM sleep. So it's might be able to fall asleep, but even if you do fall asleep, that sleep quality is not going to be good because it's still in your system whether you think it is or not.
Hmm. Yeah, so how many guys out there right now are, chronic caffeine junkies, you know what I mean? And having that in there mid-afternoon, you're having an energy drink or whatever, and it's still affecting you come bedtime. Or how many of you don't even realize it, but you're having diet sodas at dinner time, or you're going out to the restaurant at night and you're having that dinner with a diet soda, high caffeinated on the side. Some people don't realize it, but even though we hear about, say, green tea being a great fat burner, right? there's still a high dosage of caffeine through green tea. It's actually got a very thermogenic effect, which is what makes it a great fat burner in the extract. But we have to remember there's still decaffeinated versions you can get, right? And another one that I've seen is chamomile tea. Now, do you use teas at all, Coach?
Occasionally, I like chamomile. Chamomile is one of my favorite. And there's actually a sleep formula that I used to take right before bed that has like chamomile and valerian and hops and some natural herbal supplements that can really help initiate the sleep process too. So yeah, chamomile is a great one.
Perfect. Good. I wanted to make sure we covered that because a lot of people are hooked on their caffeine, right? And they're like, well, how am I going to get this in? And I don't want to give it up. I don't want to ruin my life and just make sure that I can't enjoy anything in order to succeed. It's like, no, no, you don't have to do that. But we do want to talk about timing things a little better because that's really where it's going to come down to your success versus your, let's call it your obstacle here, not getting a good night's sleep. I hate to use the word failure because I don't want anyone to feel like a failure. If you're doing something wrong, it may just be that you don't know how to do it right yet. Right? That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It's not warranting the result you're looking for. So we're trying to give you the best tips to help fix these things. Another thing about the room, and I just want to go back to this for a second because we're bouncing around between nutritional parts. We're talking about the morning, the nighttime, but I've also thought about the room going back to where we were. How many times have you been woken up by a noise in the background, something that has startled you? Or whatever it be. Is there a way to quiet the noise in the background, Coach? What would you recommend to someone who finds that they're woken up by every little noise?
White noise is a good one. They have some white noise apps and stuff you can just kind of put in the background. So that really works well for a lot of people. Just put a little background noise on. Some, birds chirping in the background or crickets or whatever suits your fancy, just something real low level that just kind of blocks everything out. Some people that's really soothing for.
Hmm. And I love that you made that point about the soothingness of the white noise. Some people will argue and go, no, that keeps me distracted. Well, maybe, but it would take a little bit of adaptation. You'll get used to it. One of the things that used to soothe me was actually the fan. Remember, I talked about not having AC? So I had to keep fans on to try to keep the room cool. Just circulation fans, right? A small fan by the bed that would kind of oscillate and come by, and you get that little vroom, it would come by, the blast of air and back, and just kind of circulate the room a little bit. Yeah, I found it helpful, but the noise of the fan at first was a little bit distracting. Then I got used to it. I adapted, and I found that it was actually the white noise I needed. It was that little distraction of like all the small stuff that was happening. So a fan can be a great way. But I also saw in the notes you mentioned something about earplugs, which was earplugs like swimmers use. Do you have any information on that? Is that something you've had a client or yourself use before?
I got that from one of the podcasts I listened to that they
Cool.
just said that was a really good recommendation for a lot of people. And I just listened to another podcast the other day where they were talking about, I think it was like, yeah, there was a sleep expert, and he was saying how this might not sit well with a lot of people, but it's the studies that he came up with said that 40% of people would do well to sleep by themselves instead of with their, their partner or something in the bed. Because a lot of times, maybe their partner snores or they're moving around a little bit, so that's going to disturb your sleep, a little bit as
Mm.
well. So we're not saying that you have to go and sleep in another room from your wife or anything like that. But maybe if you snore and your wife wears some earplugs like mine does, it'll help her sleep a little bit better. So earplugs can be a game changer too.
That's a great tip. And I love that you went there with the whole marriage thing or the partner thing, because a lot of people are like, well, hey, there's my excuse to get out of that bed. They'd be like, oh, man, I'm just going to say this is going to give me better sleep. I heard it on the Ultimate Man podcast. Don't use us and get your wife hating on us. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
But what we're saying is sometimes it might be the solution to help you out a little bit. We've also seen that when you got a partner who maybe tosses and turns and regular, they may move and wake you up. And I think about this with Chief, my dog. He's small, and since he's a puppy, we've had him on the bed. He's just very small. He's a little beagle, and he curls up just at our feet. It's excellent, and he doesn't move much. But some people have big dogs, and they end up on the bed, and they take up the majority of the bed, and they're moving, and every little noise they get up and they startle with. I mean, that can be a distraction that's keeping you awake, and you may want to consider getting the dog a bed beside your bed, down on the floor, and not on your bed. It's one of those things that could make a difference, and for some people it probably has. I haven't experienced that myself because my dog's really good on the bed. I don't even notice he's there, but he does have a go to sleep and a wake up time that's actually pretty good. And it's helpful because when he gets up, it makes me get up. I got to go take him out. So that keeps me accountable to my wake up time, which means I now have to set my go to bed time off of that schedule, or else the dog is going to cut into my sleep. So keep that in mind, pet owners out there. You can use your pet to your advantage, or you can have it become part of the problem. You have to structure that. The pet won't do it for you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
important.
and don't just sleep on a little small full size bed. If you've got a partner, just get yourself a big king ass size bed and tell them to scoot over to the other side of the bed so they're not tossing and turning on you.
That's right. That's right. And one more thing, while we're on this, I just want to ask your opinion, Coach. Have you yourself or anyone you know used the CPAP machine, the for oxygen while they sleep, the mask that they have to? Do you have any experience with that?
I know personally, but I've got some friends and some clients that are big bodybuilder bros, and they swear by them that it's definitely helped their sleep apnea a lot.
Okay. And from my understanding, you're attached to a mask and a hose that connects to a machine beside the bed that kind of provides oxygen to help you with breath, maybe prevent snoring, things like that, where you're not getting good breath control through the throat. I'm imagining if you're someone who's got a lot of extra weight, usually that's causing restriction on the throat, allowing air passage, and or let's say not allowing air passage, therefore causing you to snore, causing you to have these respiratory interruptions, and then of course affecting your sleep. Right. So the CPAP machine is to open that airway to provide oxygen and let you get a better sleep. At least that's my understanding of it. Don't claim
Yeah.
to be an expert on CPAPs, but thought I'd check with Coach AJ as well for experience. I'd like to share with one experience I've had. I had a client. He was, I believe, in his 70s. I'm trying to think back, maybe 68, 69. He came to me at the gym overweight and completely in a state of wreckage. He was in a bad way, and he wanted to get fit. This was something that he had, set out as a goal. And he was on the CPAP machine, and he said, "I'd love to get off of that one day, and not have to use it." So I can tell you this: as we worked, we ended up taking 80 pounds or more off of this guy, feeling amazing, totally regenerating his lifestyle, and the weight loss. I don't know that he ever got off the machine, but he definitely felt it was more of just like a backup plan. It was no longer the need to get a good night's sleep. He was sleeping better. And that was, a direct correlation to the CPAP machine from my own experience, was that his weight loss really allowed him to get off that machine, or at least get far enough away that he wasn't dependent on it anymore for a good night's rest. So,
Nice.
have you had any experiences like that?
No, but I could definitely see. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the main reason that people have to wear them a lot of times is just because they're overweight. They're either
Mhm.
either overweight fat or they're overweight, buffed and too muscular. Either way, they got too big of a neck. So
Right.
lose a little bit of the fat weight, and you're going to be way better off.
It's interesting that you make that correlation too, because the bodybuilders out there, the big buff dudes. Remember at the start of the day, what was the term we used back to the intro was to
Yeah,
go from scrawny to stout.
the stout. Yeah,
Right? So the stout brothers out there, right?
yeah,
The neck, the traps, air restriction and airflow. I would imagine is part of that. I never really correlated it, to be honest, in the past, as to why maybe the bodybuilders are struggling with this. I thought maybe just
yeah,
over muscled on the chest cavity, pushing down, restricting. But now that we talk about it out loud, give it some thought. That's interesting. And again,
yeah.
you've been in the bodybuilding world. You've been with those bigger, stout individuals. I've worked a lot with weight loss myself, so I start with those people and bring them. On the weight loss side, I haven't seen as much of the bodybuilder world where sleep's been affected that way. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. And if you think about it, just all the intricate muscles in the neck, like you have the sternocleidomastoid and your scalene muscles, all these in here, they become also, just larger as a bodybuilder. So those are going to be more in a more constricted state, and they're cutting off nerve flow and oxygen and everything to the neck and the airways.
Hmm. That's cool. And again, just making sure that the people listening to this understand that we've struggled with a lot of these things ourselves. And I've never been on the CPAP machine, but I mean, we're talking about all kinds of different strategies so far. So if you're taking notes, listening for the pieces of the puzzle, like finding the perfect bedtime and staying cool, getting outside, getting more sunlight, avoiding screens close to bedtime, and cutting back on caffeine are some of the points that we've covered already. And blacking out the bedroom was also on there. But then we want to talk about training a little bit, because Coach AJ and I were just talking about if you train and work out, it's going to have multiple effects on the body. When you're training really hard, do you find you get a better night's sleep? than if you took the day off and didn't train. You're just doing like a recovery day. What's your experience there, coach?
Big time. Oh yeah, yeah. I train like a madman usually when I do train too. So the end of the night comes around, I'm ready to crash out pretty hard. Um, but one thing you do want to avoid is training too strenuously close to your bedtime as well. Is it like 2 or 3 hours before bed? You don't want to hit your workout right then because you get the adrenaline pumped up and it takes a while for you to kind of chill out afterwards. So yeah, training hard will definitely help you sleep better, but just don't do it too close to bedtime.
Perfect. Perfect tip, man. That's exactly where I was going with that. So you read my mind. Excellent. We've covered so many of the tips that I wanted to make sure we touched on already, and that was one of the last ones was the training part and how close to bedtime it is. I've had some clients who, say, "Well, I don't have an appetite during the day." And I always say, well, it's probably because you haven't used enough fuel to demand fuel. Like food is fuel. And so if you get bad sleep, you also wake up with that same feeling. You're very lethargic. You're not actually increasing your activity through the day. And I think there's a major correlation to the two hormones that you talk a lot about, coach, the leptin and the ghrelin. And if you're not getting good sleep, you're waking up at a disadvantage. The signals are different, right? Your hunger signals are different. Can you speak on that in any way about the leptin and the ghrelin and how they might be affected by sleep? Is that something you've come across in studies and or even just from personal experience?
Big time. Well, on a day you don't sleep well, the next day, if you're anything like me, you're just like ravenous. Like you're sleep deprived, so you're extra hungry. And the reason for that is because there's these hormones called leptin, and leptin makes you feel more full. And ghrelin, I think G for ghrelin and G for growl. It's like ghrelin makes your stomach growl. So if your ghrelin is not in alignment with where it should be, your stomach going to be growling. You're going to be extra hungry. So
Mhm.
yeah, get that sleep. Your hormone, your hunger hormone is going to be all out of whack.
That's really important. And I think a lot of people are getting caught up in these because they're hearing these as like, trigger words and terms that are being used in the industry today, like, the GLP-1 receptors, the Ozempics and the semaglutides and things that are being used right now. And they're all talking about how it's affecting the leptin and the ghrelin hormones and suppressing your appetite. So you're losing weight and it's the magic pill. Everybody's dropping 30 pounds as soon as they start using it. And I'm like, okay, well, there's downsides too, though. You got to really be careful. Not to say don't do it, but it's meant for people who have like insulin issues and diabetic and things like that. Using it as a weight loss drug has now been approved, and I don't even want to go into that because that's a whole other episode. But we're still talking about sleep. It's just that when we're talking about the leptin and the ghrelin, you mentioned ghrelin being the one that makes you feel hungry. I think back to the Gremlins. You remember that movie, The
Yeah,
Gremlins?
yeah, yeah,
Ghrelin reminds me of gremlins, and they're like little hunger monsters. They just want to eat everything, right?
yeah.
Um, from the movie, don't feed them after midnight, right? The ghrelin hormone is that hunger hormone, but it doesn't. It actually gets suppressed when you don't get sleep, and then you wake up and you're not even. Or sorry, the leptin. Which one is it now? I could be wrong. Let me rephrase that. The lack of sleep, I believe, will lower the leptin hormone. And again, I'm gonna have to look at the notes on this one more time because I had it written down, I think. Um, but what we're saying is that if you wake up after a lack of sleep, you're gonna have. We talked about cognitive function. You're not thinking as clearly. You start to choose the poor foods. You end up with an appetite for processed food when you don't normally do that. Those types of things, the signals are off, and so you start eating more poor food, but you also have less activity. So now you're actually creating a recipe for weight gain, which
Mhm.
is, the complete opposite direction you want to go in because you're trying to eat healthier and you're trying to be more active. But sleep is going to drive both of those things. So I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of bring that to the forefront. And I know that I rambled and kind of lost track of where I was there for a second, but that's what keeps this real, is that those hormones are highly affected. And Coach Aaron talks about the leptin and the ghrelin a lot. And there's the fight or flight and the rest and digest, right? The two,
Yep, that's it. Yeah, and I think you're
yeah.
right. I think the sleep deprivation lowers the leptin and increases the ghrelin, so you're not
Mhm.
as you're more hungry because of the ghrelin being elevated, and you're not as full because of the leptin being lowered.
Yeah, and then like I say, that's Perfect. Thank you for backing me up on that, Coach. And then the lack of activity part of it is the other part of the recipe because now you're not feeling active. You're in a groggy state. You're just not energized. And even though you're choosing foods, you're choosing the wrong foods that aren't really nourishing your body. So it just we talked about that recipe for downward spiral, and that's one of them right there. Are there any specific uses? Let me see here. You mentioned the phone. I think the phone is a really critical one. Phone plugged across the room, and a lot of people live on the phone, and it's our go-to. It's our handheld computer. It's with us every day. We run business on it. We use it for connection to family members or whatever reason we use it, and then a lot of times we just get caught up scrolling. Right? And you're laying in bed and you're scrolling that phone before bed. And we know that that's going to keep us awake now. We've talked about it. Are there any apps or any specific strategies with the phone? You mentioned put it away. Just that's the best solution. Put it away, put it across the room. But I've just kind of been listening to different podcasts where they've talked about some of the things you can do to kind of dim it. There's an app called Twilight, which is actually something you can put on your phone to dim it down. Have you heard of any, Coach, that you might recommend people take a look at in the way of apps or anything to dim the screen?
I think I've heard of that one as well. Twilight. There's one on mine. I'm not sure the name of it right off the bat, but I use a dimmer at night as well.
Hmm.
And yeah, just keep it. I've heard that it's good to keep it at least 6 feet away from you while you sleep, and then
Hmm.
put it in airplane mode. So that's what I do.
Right. Good, excellent. And the airplane mode's great because you're not going to have alerts and things popping up too. Because I know the minute that
Yeah.
something pops up on your phone, you hear a little ding, you're right on it, right? Check it out. Like what I
Yeah.
have, and it's just a notification. Someone posted something somewhere in a
Yeah.
group you're in. It's like not important, but you get alerted. The fight or flight response goes off. Must check this message. So those of you who are taking notes, here's something that I want you to kind of keep in mind. Eating before bed can affect your sleep. Drinking before bed can affect your sleep. And of course, screen time before bed can affect your sleep. So let's go to drinking. We're talking about water. And I think next week we're actually going to have a podcast most likely on hydration and water. But before we go to the next week's podcast, let's touch a little bit, Coach, on why would water affect someone's sleep? What would be the main reason that water would affect someone's sleep?
You get up and piss too much during the night.
It's just common sense, right?
It's
Water in.
bad enough to get up once. You don't want to be getting up 3 or 4 times and disturbing your sleep just because you got to go to the bathroom. So yeah, don't drink too much water before bed.
Totally. And I know that we were on our call with our gentleman in the summer shred program talking about this exact thing. I've been a victim of it. I've had workouts where I drink literally like a couple liters of water during the workout. It's hot, I'm pumping, and my muscles are filling with water. And, the muscles are storage lockers, taking the water in and the glycogen, and you're just feeling swole. It feels good. So I drink more water and pump it up even bigger, right? And I'm just inflated, man. It feels awesome when you're working out. But then I've got like every 15 minutes after my workout, I'm dumping water, man. I'm going. And again, we talked about working out too late in the night. A lot of people get home from work and then they have to go do their workout at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night at the gym, right? And if you do that type of thing like I was doing where you're drinking a lot of water, that water is going to have to dump and there's going to be an emptying time that's going to interrupt you. So there's been times where most of the guys out there are talking about this. And as a listener right now, you've woke up at least once or twice in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. Water has to be timed, and each of you is individual. So your timing is going to be a little different. But there is a rule that I've heard on different podcast sources and things like that. And it's just a suggestion, but we call the 3-2-1 rule. And you guys will want to apply that. And so we're talking about 3 hours before bed, 2 hours before bed, and 1 hour before bed. And those are like time restraints to put in there. So 3 hours before bed, no more food, which can keep the digestive going and the activity in the gut to allow you a better sleep. 2 hours before bed, we're trying to help you to get rid of the water so you're not waking up and having the flush in the middle of the night. And 1 hour before bed, no more screen time. Try to get rid of the screens because that's going to be your last hour before bed to shut her down. So we've talked about that 3-2-1 rule on our calls with our gentlemen. So we're giving some very valuable information here. But again, your application is everything. Whether this works for you or not, you got to apply. So Coach Aaron, if we stopped the drinking 2 hours before bed, would that work for you personally, or do you have a different protocol? Do you go maybe 3 hours before bed? When do you cut your water off?
I'll have like a little water, like 2 or 3 hours before bed, but not much, just like enough to take my vitamins with my dinner type stuff. But I
Hmm.
really like my typical bedtime is like, 9 or 10 p.m. And I'll usually try to cut the majority of my high water intake off like around 5 or 6. It was like the last time I had my last liter of water.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm well beyond that 2 hour window. I'm probably more like 4 hours before there because I really don't like to get up and go pee in the middle of the night any more than I have to. And then
I
the
love it.
food part of it, I also don't like to go to bed with the being hungry at all too. So I'll probably have my last meal maybe like 2 hours before bed. So I feel satisfied, but it still has a couple hours to digest and it's not gonna interfere with my sleep as well.
Sweet, brother. And so you covered those areas that I was, like for myself, I think that I follow the 3-2-1 rule to the best of my ability and modify it. And for some people, they have to adjust it a little bit for, their lifestyle and how they have dinner with the family type stuff. But I like that you were talking about the, the cutting back on the food part a little earlier too. I had a client where I just threw that out there and said, let's just try this, see what you find. And she had not broken a weight loss plateau in a while. And then she said, what should I do? And I just said, well, listen, no more snacking after dinner. It was just the snacking part, right? And she was like, oh, okay, well, I could try that. And she messages the next morning going, okay, that's magic. Just totally dropped my weight, broke my plateau. It was like something so simple, right? But it was after dinner, there's that last little snack before bed thing. For some people, they might be okay with that and still sleep well, but she wasn't getting the sleep. And then so the snack was affecting the sleep. Once she took the snack out, the sleep got better, and the sleep led to a better reset and recharge and weight loss in the morning. So bingo, right? And
Nice,
again, it's
nice.
just the anecdotal evidence, but again, these are things we've seen with our clients. And you, the listener, you got to apply it to find out if it works for you. But we're dropping a ton of bombs here for you today. They're going to give you the most information we can. One of the notes you made that just made me really kind of like, whoa, I never thought about that, coach, was lock your door so you feel secure. What's that all about? How's that going to lead to better sleep?
Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, I we lock our doors just out of habit now, anyways. But I think just the simple fact of just going back to where we're, you know, human creatures and where our safety is one of our number one priorities. So you just anything that takes your subconscious mind from having to think about your overall well-being and safety is probably a good thing. So I know some people that don't have to worry about intruders coming in the middle of the night. That's kind of a big thing for a lot of people. So why not
Totally.
do it? Lock your door. Easy.
Again, and that it's one of those simple things that people might be missing out on. And the idea of being safe and secure is the same as me pulling up that blanket I was talking about earlier. Just a comfort feeling. It's a peace of mind. It's a security blanket, right? But that's the key is locking that door. When I saw that on your list of things we want to talk about today, I was like, I want to hear about that. Is it like an experience maybe you had or just something you've seen? But I think back to cave days. I mean, hell yeah, if there was a way to lock the cave door, they would have felt a lot safer, right? But an
Yeah.
animal could literally come in. So the fight or flight is like, it just, we as humans have an amazing adaptation to the circumstance and the environment we create. So those of you listening, create the environment for sleep. Your bedroom, and again, I've heard this from one of the guys I listen to, Sean Stevenson, and he said your room should be the S, and it's sleep and sex. That's it. That's your room, and those two things. Other than that, there should be nothing in there. In fact, studies had shown that couples who had a TV in the room had less sex and less quality sleep. I was like, okay, well, that's pretty cool, right? And again, the studies they run are on all kinds of different variables, and they try to control the environment to get actual statistical data. And so, a TV in your room could actually be a detriment. You may be watching screens before bed, watching TV, and it could be interrupted. But he was talking about the sex part of it, and he said a good night's sleep comes from the oxytocin release and the chemical hormone release from sex after an orgasm and the way that the body shuts down. But they said there was also a higher level of sleep quality that came from having sex with a partner versus doing it manually yourself, right? Which is, I was like, that's pretty cool too. And again, we're the Ultimate Man podcast. We're going to give you the real deal. We hope that it's unfiltered and uncensored. So if you're okay with hearing about masturbation, this is based on studies. But the self release was not the same quality of chemical release to the brain as having sex with a partner and the fulfillment that comes with that, which was pretty freaking cool. And both,
Yeah.
were studies on how it affects the sleep portion. So that's a really good indicator. You want to have more sex, tell your wife that you need to get better sleep, so you got to have more sex. It's going to help your sleep life.
There you
Right?
go.
It's gonna help both lives.
Win-win.
So, win-win.
Yep.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. So that was just something I came across recently too, and I was like, "Hey, this is good information, though, right?" Because we talked about sleeping in different rooms potentially, if it's a necessity. But your room should be your sleep haven. It's what it's designed for. Don't use your bedroom as your office. Don't use your bedroom as your theater to go watch a movie. Like, try to get that room to be your dark place. It's your cave. It's your shutdown. Your oasis for sleep. And if you can do that and control the temperature and everything, you're going to get a good night's rest, which is important. Are there any specifics, Coach, that jump out to you that we haven't touched on that you wanted to kind of highlight before we go today?
I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to a couple other things here. I made notes of, like, we were talking about lights and stuff, blocking out all the lights in your room. Another good tip I would suggest is having like a red light, like a night light in your bathroom. So instead of just some regular bright fluorescent white light is a night light in your bathroom, if you put a red light in there, that's supposed to um, not fuck with your melatonin during the night as well. So
Mm.
there's that. Don't work in your bedroom, like you said. So don't be doing work on your laptop while you're sitting in bed. Go take it out to your dining room or wherever you work and do some stuff there. And then one other thing is, don't stay in bed awake. So if you wake up and you can't go back to sleep, like, try to train your body that your bed and is just there for sleeping. So if you end up doing waking up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, don't just stay there with your eyes wide open and stay in bed. Get up, go to a dimly lit room, do a little reading for a little bit, wait till you get a little drowsy again, and then go back to bed instead of just staying there, eyes wide awake.
Mm. That's a good point. Because again, you can get that interruption and that staying awake and alert pattern going. I like that you mentioned reading. That's obviously something that we encourage as high level achievers, businessmen. You hear it from all the top earners of the world and the highest business people. They read books regularly. And I think we've gotten a digital world where we've gotten away from reading. So if anyone reads, like, oh yeah, I totally read that on like Kindle or one of these like phone apps, and they go, that's where I read all my material. But there's still something to be said for opening an old book. There's no light. And again, that being said, I guess if you're in a room, you're trying to make it dark, you're going to need a reading light, but you'll want a dimmer reading light, not a big, bright, turn the lights on and light the whole room up. You're trying to dim it down and take it in stages of going darker, darker, darker. But I know that from school, man, I'm going to get real with you. I would fall asleep reading. It was actually like an aid to help me sleep, was trying to read. I don't know if that's everybody, but when I would read in school, I was literally, my head would start like nodding down. I'm like, oh my God, I'm at school and I'm falling asleep. And it wasn't that I had a bad night's sleep, it triggered me to relax reading a book. I don't know if that works for you, Coach, the same way, but reading makes me feel very, very tired. I don't know if it's the amount of focus my eyes are trying to put on one given spot and they just kind of get fatigued doing that. I don't know, but I love to read. I can only do it in short bursts, so it actually becomes a benefit to me to read before bed. It would actually help me sleep a little bit more. I get drowsy when I read. Does that happen to you?
I could see that. I don't read as much anymore because I'm all about podcasts. So I just listen to everything nowadays because it's easier. But yeah, definitely reading does help you nod off a little bit. Yep.
Totally, totally. And again, we'll get into episodes where we recommend books and things that you're gonna have to use to up your game and improve your level, because that's our mission, to help you guys out there get better at you being a better version of yourself, becoming the ultimate man, which is what we want for you. So one of the last things I want to talk about, our last topic before we go today. We've got about a minute left on the hour. We've done really well today, Coach. We've bounced around, but we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So one of the things was melatonin. And I think that when we talk about that, people start supplementing before bed. Now, I was reading, or sorry, no, I was watching and listening to a podcast with one of the guys I respect a lot, listening to his studies, is Lane Norton. And he covered a lot of material. And in his tips and strategies, he talked about a lot of what we talked about today: the nighttime routine, the no social media before bed, the blue light blockers or apps to block blue light, darkening the room, cool temperatures, the sound machine for noise, and the optimal performance enhancement. So all of what we covered. But one of the things that he covered that we didn't was actual melatonin ingestion as a supplement. And he had suggested 3 to 10 milligrams of melatonin. Now that, when I looked it up elsewhere, found that it was kind of a high dosage. And the fear of that was that an individual could become dependent on it and not allow the body to produce its own natural melatonin. And then I thought back to other information I've read and heard over the years was about caffeine and stimulants too, where your body has a natural ability to create things. And if you supplement too much, you're going to actually dull that signal for creation and then become dependent on the drug. There goes our timer. We are near the end, so we'll wrap it up here. We're doing an amazing job with our time, but let's go into that for a second, Coach. Have you had any studies about the 3 milligram to 10 milligram range, like Lane was talking about, or the other side of it, where I would put a warning on that and say, don't become dependent on a supplement like that, where you want to create your own melatonin. Let your body have its own natural circadian rhythm. You know, that starts in the morning when you get up at first light, and then you start to notice your nighttime serotonin and your melatonin production and releases are taking place the way they should versus supplementing. So, do you take a melatonin supplement? Have you used it before, or is it something that you would recommend?
I've used it before. I have done a lot of research on it. And high dose melatonin can help stimulate GH, growth hormone production, and neurogenesis. So it's really, good for the mind in a lot of ways. But I also have heard a lot of experts say that it's not such a good thing. One of my buddies and coaches that I follow did a real high dose, for that neurogenesis benefit, but he started experiencing some real bad lethargy symptoms and stuff. So he kind of backed off the high doses. I've only really done pretty low doses, like 3 milligrams in a synergistic, nighttime formula, along with the other herbs like chamomile and stuff that I mentioned. So I would probably err on the side of going more on the low dose because, and then Huberman's another one that
Mhm.
he's not a big fan of it himself because he says that it can help initiate sleep. And this is something I found when I started playing with the high dose melatonin. I wasn't going super high, but maybe like 10 milligrams, it was up there. It would help initiate sleep so you could fall asleep better, but then I would wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't go back to sleep. And he says
Mm.
that's one of the things that he finds with people. So I mean, it's something you might want to play with if you have severe sleeping problems, just like maybe a low dose formula. But I mean, if you can just stimulate your own natural melatonin production by getting that circadian rhythm dialed in, getting some sunlight during the day, so you're increasing your serotonin, which is going to lead to melatonin production. I would go with those natural methods first.
Beautiful. I love that. That's a great way to wrap things up too, in, putting it all into perspective. The supplementation world has become very popular. Everybody's got a supplement out there now. Most influencers out there are selling their supplement, and they've got their agenda behind why they push it. So you got to be careful with where you're getting your information, and of course the advice of people who are looking to make a dollar off of their supplement, and they're pushing that. But again, we're trying to bring you the science from different perspectives and show you both sides, let you make your own decisions. But we want to guide you towards making a decision that's going to benefit you rather than harm you. And one of the things that I've found was that dependency on any supplement is supplements are meant to supplement. That's their job. It's not to become your dependency. It's to fill in the blanks where you're not getting enough. So I think that's important. And if you can get up and get a good start to your day with a consistent scheduled bedtime, you will start your circadian rhythm and then release your natural melatonin at the end of the night the way you're supposed to, and then get a good night's sleep between 10 and 2 for sure. I find the quality of my sleep is more important than the quantity of my sleep consistently. So if I sleep 10 hours, which seems like, oh man, I should wake up fully recharged, I wake up kind of lethargic, like I've overslept, and I feel like I'm dragging. I'm back to that dragging ass feeling. Yet I slept a ton. Then there's other nights I sleep like 5 or 6 hours, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a bad sleep. But my sleep score and my quality have gone way up because I slept in a deeper state and I got more quality in that shorter duration. So, and again, it's usually on a day where I've worked out hard and I felt like I really spent a lot. So my system went into a deep central nervous system shutdown. I got great recovery. And another thing I've read, and again, on the idea of about 6 hours or so is that there's cycles of sleep. So sleep runs in like a 90-minute cycle. And again, there might be different sciences on that. Don't quote me on it, but there are cycles to the sleep that run. And so as you go through the night, it runs through different stages of sleep in a cycle. And those cycles should run about 4 times through the night, which is why 6 to 7 hours are really optimal. 8 hours is kind of the suggested dosage we hear, but you can run through those cycles and make sure you're getting a good quality there. So that's part of the setting a bedtime and a wake up time and be consistent. But my advice is don't be the person who hits the snooze button. The snooze button starts your sleep cycle when you go back to sleep. And you're now going to wake up in the next 5 minutes and interrupt that first cycle stage. And now you're going to be more groggy than you were when you first got up. So don't hit the snooze. Don't be a snoozer and a loser. All right. And you know what? That reminds me of one more rhyme: a snoozer, a loser, and a boozer. So what about that, coach? What would alcohol do to your sleep?
Jacks it up, dude. Jacks it up. It might help you fall asleep a little bit easier just because you pass out. But then again, it's going to mess with your REM sleep. So you're just not going to be able to rejuvenate and get that neurogenesis that you need. So yeah, alcohol is absolutely horrible. If you're trying to get in better shape and lose weight and maintain your muscle and win the fight loss hustle,
Yeah.
you need to cut the booze out, man. Long story
Mm.
short.
Perfect. I love that you gave us some background on that. I had a buddy who literally claimed that, booze was the answer to his good quality sleep. It helped him fall asleep faster. But then he was up and he was getting poor sleep. The actual sleep he was getting was really shitty quality. And then he had to kind of cut back on that. Well, it wasn't the answer. So don't trick yourself into thinking that it is. Alcohol's not giving you a better sleep. It's just helping you maybe shut down a little quicker. But that's all based on the relaxation that it brings you. You could relax in other ways. You don't need that crutch, that vice to do that relaxation. Breath work can be a great way. Lay in bed and work on box breathing. Have you used any of that technique before, coach? The box breathing where you breathe in,
Yeah.
you take a deep breath in for about 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, breathe out for 5 seconds, and then back holding it again before your next breath in. Do that 5 by 5 by 5 all the way around the box. Draw that in your mind as you lay in bed. What a relaxation technique to help you fall asleep.
Yeah. Great meditation right there. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people are just looking for that quick fix. So they're looking to take a pill to help them sleep better. But before you start adding things to the repertoire, start thinking about just not self-sabotaging your sleep to begin with. So implementing some of these strategies we went over before you start piling more stuff on. Get rid of the all the lights and the phone and all that and the screens, and give yourself a wind down ritual. All these little tips that we just went over,
Mhm.
optimize your sleep first. And then if that doesn't work, then maybe think about adding on some supplements or something.
That's it. Amazing. I love this episode because sleep is such an important part. I hope that anyone listening to this who came in today with an idea that sleep isn't really that big of a needle mover, is it? I hope that now you realize after everything we've covered that sleep is mostly the driving factor behind it all. If you get good sleep and recharge everything that we've talked about today, you're guaranteed to see results. And that's a guarantee that no magic pill can claim will last. This one will last. That's the biggest difference. So if you're losing weight, you're not losing body fat, that's a problem. People don't realize that weight loss and body fat loss are different because you could be losing muscle mass, and lacking sleep is going to cause the most amount of muscle loss, even though you see the scale go down. So people think they're losing weight. That's the worst thing you can have because long term, you're not going to survive. It's going to rebound. We don't want to see the rebound for you folks out there. We've been there, we've done it, and we've gotten the t-shirt. So listen closely, take the advice as best that you can, keep up with the notes and everything. And today's episode on sleep has been a lot of fun. Coach Aaron, I appreciate all your wisdom, all the notes and everything that we brought to the party today. Just awesome, brother. Anything you want to do to add the final statement to the show today?
Now back at you, brother. Epic episode, and thank you for your wisdom as well. I love these because we just not only do we get to learn from one another, but we also get to teach what we've learned in the process of doing all of our studies to our listeners, and to be able to share that. And then the more that we can share it, the more we learn it ourselves. So it's a win-win for us as well as our whole community. So super glad for all of our listeners out there. Please like and subscribe, become a part of our Ultimate Man community. And we'll see you guys soon on the next episode. You want to finish it
Nice.
off, brother?
Yeah, so again, we're condensing decades into days, and since we're at least 3 hours before bed right now, we can afford to have a drink. And cheers to the ultimate man. So everyone who's been listening, you got your drink ready and you've been waiting for this. It's time to toast and cheers to the ultimate man.
Salud.
Hydration. Keep it coming. Keep that water coming. And on
Front
that
load
note,
that
guys,
water.
yeah, there you go. If you haven't seen our previous episodes, please dive into our library. There's a ton of great information on all the topics that deal with health and weight loss, muscle building, and mental health. The pillars of what drive us to be the guys that we are today, have the energy we have today, and work on the physique, because that's a project in the making, and it's who you become in the journey that matters more than anything else. It's not just getting to a goal, because as soon as you reach your goal, you're just going to set a new one. You'll never be satisfied chasing a goal. But it's good to have them because it keeps you on a directory, like on a direction of where you want to move. But who you become is really important to us. So hit us up in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're from, what you do for a living, and how your fitness journey's looking. Coach AJ and I love that stuff. Bring it to us. Let us know where you're at, okay? Where do you listen to your podcast around the world? And on that note, we'll all put our fist in. Let's bring it in, boys, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, get some.